Hey everyone, welcome back to Shop Life. I've got a beautiful E46 M3 behind me today. We are really in for a treat. It's got a lot of mods done to it. It is a OEM plus modified E46 M3, and it's actually in a surprisingly, not really surprisingly, it's in a pretty rare color. It's a Mystic Blue 2003 BMW M3 with only 83,000 miles, so it's super low mileage, and it actually belongs to a father and son duo who bought this car as their own, like, father and son project. It has, by looking at it, you would think that's not a project car, but really it actually is, because it's got a lot of mods done to it, but those mods are not playing well together. So this car is in here because we're troubleshooting it. So we're gonna play a game today. As I said, this is a super clean car and the mods are also super clean, but we're just trying to chase down an intermittent stalling and almost kind of like a limp mode kind of issue. So what happens is every now and then the car will not want to rev anymore. It'll be stuck pretty much and hit a wall at 4,000 RPM. So we're gonna run down the mod list, and I want you guys to start brainstorming with me. Start commenting down below. What do you think the problem is? I have an idea of what the problem most likely is, and I'll give a couple of hints while we're going through this process and while I'm showing you guys around the car. All right, so here it is. Right off the bat, it does have coilovers installed, and it also has, if you guys can see, competition brakes all around. So this is not a competition pack car. It is Mystic Blue, and it's a 2003, but they did put the competition pack brakes all around on it, and it's got, I believe, AST Coilovers. So I've got a build list with this car, and that's one thing I love about cars like this. When people modify them, they keep very good records. That really helps out when you're troubleshooting stuff like the issues that this car has. Here we go. Now this is a mod that I really want to do on my car, my S54 sedan. It's either a CSL Airbox, because they just sound so good, and also they just look good. Look at this. It's a carbon fiber airbox. And this one I believe was made on the older forums. It was a gentleman that used to make these, and I think this was bought at a group buy. So I'm not sure if he makes them anymore, but you can see it just looks amazing. It's got a few cosmetic issues because there were some issues with this airbox. I believe there was some cracking going on, and it was repaired. It's also got a Radium engineering oil catch can, which is also a very good looking piece. You can see those coilovers with those camber plates. And then the other thing is it's actually got a CSL rail. So that pairs very well with this airbox. It allows you to install a map sensor, which is down in there. They also have this intake air temperature sensor installed, and it all runs into the DME. Now here, I'm gonna start giving you guys some hints on what I think the problem is, and we're gonna find here pretty shortly. We'll see if it is that issue or not. This is a 2003. It is a facelift technically. On the E46 M3s, there wasn't really much of a facelift. The main signs of a facelift you could tell are these tail lights. And as you can see, there's another hint. Not gonna say what it is, but there is a hint in this shot right here of what the issue I think is. It's also got a Dynon muffler, but that's not all of the mods that are done to the exhaust, and we're gonna see that here more once we lift it up, but I'll show you guys right through here. If I recall correctly, those are some Supersprint headers, and it's also got, I believe, a Supersprint section 2 with the 200 cell cats. So I do have the build list, I just don't have it on me right now, but you can see, all that stuff looks like it was done properly. I believe this was owned by some kind of aircraft mechanic or pilot or something like that. They are very methodical, and they like to keep records of everything, because they have to. When you're flying a plane, you have to make sure everything is written down and everything has to be done by the book. So you can see my laptop is already in here. So I already scanned it when I first pulled it into the shop, and what the codes that I found were P0171, P0174. Obviously I had the actual input codes, but those are just normal vacuum leak codes. And there was a couple of other ones. So let me go ahead and scan this car one more time. I did go ahead and pull everything in, got the battery nice and charged up as well. So we're going to scan all of the modules and see what other codes are popping up. All right, let's scan it and see what we have here. All right, we're going to start with the engine module. This is a MSS54. Doesn't matter if you have the HP or not. I don't believe this specific DME is the HP variant. So the HP DME pretty much has double the memory. That's the one that the CSL has. It has a different variation of the HP, but the HP DME, so MSS54 HPs, they actually came on, if I recall correctly, September of 2003 production date and later. So the production date of this car is April of 2003. As you can tell, it says the 14th week of the third year of 2000. So 14th week in 2003, which is sometime in April. All right, let's see what errors are on here. So as I said before, there's 3 errors. There's one for the catalytic converter efficiency, I believe. It's all in German, but the other 2 errors are 174 and 175, which usually has to do with vacuum system compared to the fuel system. This could be from either, even a clogged air filter can cause this, a bad MAF sensor, a bad fuel pump, not getting enough fuel pressure. But this car actually has a upgraded fuel pump. So it's got the Walbro 255, which is a great fuel pump, and it's installed with the Radium engineering kit, which is phenomenal, honestly. So I don't think that's an issue, but we will definitely have to check that out. But I think the main issue here is something else entirely. So I'm still gonna let you guys guess. Comment down below what you think it is. In the meantime, let's scan some more modules. So limp mode, right? Limp mode is when the car pretty much shuts you out from really doing much. So it actually stops you from going over a certain RPM. And it's usually right around 4,000 RPM is where it limits you. And this can be caused by a couple of things. When you go into limp mode with an EML light on the M3, that means there's something going on with the throttle bodies, the throttle position sensors, the throttle actuator, anything like that. That's usually what that EML light comes on for. But if you get thrown into limp mode for something else and you don't have the EML light on, it could also be from something as simple as like a speed sensor or something wrong with the traction control system. So that's what we're going to check next. If you guys haven't seen already, it is a 6-speed manual. So we're not having any SMG troubles here, and this is a factory 6-speed manual, and this one does have the MK60 Dsc system. So let's see if there's any errors stored in here. So there are no errors in the Dsc system. So that's going to rule out one of the issues that would cause limp mode. So now with the CSL Airbox, you have to have a proper tune in order for it to run properly. And now this is also paired with those Supersprint headers, which are similar to the Euro headers in that there's no cats built into the headers. Now with US spec cars, the headers had built-in cats. On the Supersprint headers, there's no cats installed in them. So the cats are further down in the middle section pretty much, and these have some upgraded 200 cell cats, which is not a big deal, and it shouldn't really throw off any of the fuel system or air, like any of the O2 sensor readings and stuff, as far as if you have it tuned properly. It shouldn't make a big difference because usually your pre-cat O2 sensor is before the catalytic converter, and that's what's reading and adjusting all the fuel maps and stuff like that. So even if you install headers without cats, you're going to get a check engine light for the post-cat O2 sensor readings, but the pre-cat O2 sensor readings should automatically adjust for most of the fuel maps and stuff like that. So it's not that big of a deal. But on here with that CSL Airbox, you have to have a proper tune in order for it to run properly, because when you install the CSL Airbox, there is no MAF sensor. So the MAF sensor gets completely deleted. You're going to install that intake air temperature sensor, which I showed you guys, and you really want to install a MAP sensor, which is why they installed that CSL rail. Now with the MAP sensor on the DMEs that are not the HP DMEs, so just the normal MSS54 of the earlier model E46 M3s, they do not have the ability to read the MAP sensor. You have to have an HP DME, or you can have your MSS54 non-HP DME sent into a place, or if you're, you know, proficient in soldering, you can desolder those EEPROM chips and put the upgraded, the bigger chips, pretty much double the size, and that pretty much converts it to a HPDME. You also have to add a couple of capacitors and resistors and all of that, but that's a whole nother situation. But what we're gonna do now, we're gonna put it on the lift and we're gonna double check a couple of other things. So I know that the current owners of this car, they already replaced all the throttle position sensors, even the pedal sensor, and they have also checked all of the fuel system as far as the fuel pressure regulator, the vacuum lines, all that stuff goes. But we're still gonna put it up on the lift just to get an overall look of everything, see if there's anything else I noticed out of the ordinary before I let you guys know what I really think the issue is. All right, let's see how she looks underneath. So here you can see the exhaust. You guys can see it's aftermarket. We've got some stuff melting on here, which is not good. Seems like somebody didn't have the O2 sensor routed properly. I don't think that's what melted. I think a previous one probably melted on there, but this one has been replaced. And you can see how they ran all the way up in through there. But now, here we have something. So the fuel filter has definitely been replaced. Now there's a fuel pressure regulator that is separate on the S54. I'm not sure if that has been replaced. According to the records, I believe it has been, and I saw a spare one in the trunk. So we do have two of those if we need to go about it. But this is one thing I don't like. We are missing the cover here. There's a cover that goes into this, and it covers this whole section. And this is supposed to be bolted up. But it's also missing the section where the screw actually screws into. So there's like a little, you can see how there's a square hole. There's supposed to be a little fastener in there that allows you to screw something into it. It's missing. That's not that big of a deal. And we can see the aftermarket exhaust. You can see this whole different section right here. This is a single pipe. And this actually, that single pipe makes a huge difference when it comes to the sound of this exhaust. It makes it sound a lot less raspy, which I know a lot of people compare the S54 to a Honda, honestly, because sometimes these cars can sound very raspy. They sound amazing at the higher RPMs, but when it's just like low RPMs, like I would say around 4,000 RPM, it does not sound, you know, that aggressive. It sounds a little bit tin canny. A lot of people like it. I don't mind it. But here's another mod that we can see, this upgraded rear sway bar. You can see how it's got upgraded sway bar links as well. I'm sure this car feels really, really tight. With all these mods, these coilovers I believe are AST coilovers, and you can tell that the springs are not just any springs that come with any basic coilover. These are some upgraded springs as well. So whoever dialed this car in, I'm sure they knew what they were going for, and they probably have it handling amazing. Even the front sway bars are upgraded with the adjustable end links, which I love to see adjustable end links. The brakes look good. It looks like somebody's replaced the speed sensor before. Front coilovers look good. We got stainless steel lines all around. We're not really looking too much for leaks or anything like that. I was pretty clear with the owner of this car that I would be troubleshooting and trying to fix their issue with the whole situation with the car going into limp mode. Not really looking to do all that maintenance work at this moment, just because we already have quite a backlog of other builds that we need to complete. So this car in specific, I mean, if we find anything, obviously I will let the owner of the car know what all I find, but our sole task here is to figure out why it's going into limp mode intermittently and why it doesn't run as well as it should. With these mods, I mean, this car should feel a lot, I wouldn't say a lot quicker, but definitely quicker than a stock M3, especially because, yes, it has a custom tune on it already. So this car has been tuned. The DME has been sent out before, according to the owner that did these mods. So that was 2 owners ago that did most of these mods. And he had the DME sent out to get upgraded in a sense. And at that upgrade, it was also custom tuned. And that should have had this car running completely great. Like, it should be running like a dream, but it has not ever ran like a dream. I just couldn't help myself. I had to take the covers off. So I ended up taking all the covers off. I found a few things. Some of the bolts were loose for the reinforcement plate, but none of that stuff really matters. I did notice though that a lot of the O2 sensor wires are just hanging there. I mean, they should be a little bit more secure. None of them really look melted. I also found a couple of other maintenance items, like the CPV O-Ring is leaking. Everything else looks pretty good. Let me show you guys. So you can see this oil leak right here. Now I've got a video that goes over this. This is the most misdiagnosed oil leak on the E46 M3. Usually when that CPV O-Ring starts to leak, it actually gets a little bit more further than all of this. You're gonna have more of an issue than that. So you can pretty much diagnose it as like an oil pan leak almost, or even a valve cover leak or a rear main seal leak. But in this case, it's pretty easy to tell. If you follow this oil residue up, it goes straight to that CPV section. I'll have that video linked down below. But everything else honestly looks pretty good. And here's another telltale sign that somebody has already tried fixing this issue that they're experiencing. So it's not a first time. You can see there's this O2 sensor is brand new. Same with the one that's further up. But you can see how the wiring just looks all jumbled up. They've got a couple of zip ties here out of the way. But when you get further down here, you can see how it's just resting on top of the exhaust. So we're going to have to find a way to secure that a little bit better. None of that stuff looks melted, although it has melted before. So whenever you have O2 sensor wiring melting, doesn't matter what kind of car it is, but BMWs in specific, M3s or even non-Ms, it usually blows a fuse. So whenever these wires melt and they short together, it's gonna blow a fuse. But sometimes, even if it blows the fuse, there's always a possibility that you risk damaging something else. Now let me tell you guys something about the E46 M3. If you haven't been following the market, prices are skyrocketing. And that's the same for all of the parts. So any of these E46 M3 parts cars, all the prices have skyrocketed. So if you need a DME for an E46 M3, it's no longer $200, $300. They're double, triple the price, and the HP DMEs are even more expensive. And another thing, the oldest M3 at this point is over 20 years old. Now, as you guys know, electronics get outdated by the second, honestly. And that's no different with car electronics. And these DMEs, a lot of the chips and stuff that go bad on those DMEs, they are no longer available as well. So that's pretty much what I'm getting at. I think the issue with this car, if you guys didn't catch it previously when I showed you guys the license plate pretty much told me what the problem is with the car. And I believe it is the tune that's on here. So scroll back in the video and you'll see the license plate starts with a TUN, the tune. So this DME that's in here, I believe is a MSS54. So the MSS54 DME on its own does not have the capabilities to read that map sensor. So the tune that's probably on this car, in order for it to accommodate that CSL Airbox, is probably just an alpha N tune. If you don't know what that is, Google it. I'm sure you'll find a bunch of stuff that goes over all of that. But it pretty much gets rid of the map sensor completely, and it only goes based off of the intake air temperature sensor and pretty much the throttle position. That is not a good tune to have. It's usually a very hit or miss tune. You really want that map sensor to work. Now, I know there's possibilities that you can solder stuff onto the board, like a different capacitor or resistor, and unlock that capability of just that map sensor. But the proper way to do it is you want to upgrade the entire DME to the MSS54 HP. And you can upgrade that DME to the HP, the same one that you have in here, just the normal MSS54, by changing out those EEPROM chips and putting the newer style chips and adding those resistors and all of that. But there's only a couple of people that I know that are reliably doing this. But that's one other thing though. You know, these DMEs are 20 plus years old at this point, or close to 20 years old. Whenever you start messing with those electronics, you always have that risk of damaging stuff, breaking stuff, and those chips are no longer available. So you're really having to scavenge them off of other DMEs and all of that. So the best way to go about doing it is to see if you could source just an HP DME. So the MSS54 HP is found on the newer style E46 M3s. So late 2003 build dates and newer, 2004, 2005, 2006. And the CSL DMEs are even rarer than that because they have a couple of other upgrades on those DMEs. So if you have an MSS54 HP DME, you can run the CSL Airbox, you can even run a CSL tune, but you will not be able to get that flap to work on that intake manifold until you upgrade that DME. I'm not sure if you guys really care about all that information, but I thought I should express it because it is pertaining to this car since it has that CSL Airbox. Let me pull this car back down, take the DME out, and show you guys those chips that I'm talking about. So the DME is located right here in the engine bay. You can see some extra wires and some taps ran in here, and this is for that map sensor and the intake air temperature sensor. But let me go ahead and pull this DME out, take it out of the casing so we can see and get a better look at those chips that I was talking about. With the casing off, the DME looks relatively untouched. So I don't really think there was really anything done to it, but the main part that we're looking for are these chips right here. So you can see the two big chips, one is the master, one is the slave, but these smaller chips right next to it, the one that says 200 BB at the end, those need to be 400 BB, which as it sounds would be double the size. And that would allow us to run the full CSL software and everything. So if this was a converted DME, those chips would have been 400 BB. So this one is a stock MSS54. The way that I would go about it with that CSL Airbox is a no-brainer. You want to upgrade to that HP DME. Whether we get those chips soldered on this DME or we buy just an HP DME just overall. And I can do all the programming, I can do all the coding, I can convert everything on that HP DME to the CSL tune with like a BDM programmer and all of that. We have the capabilities to do all of that. So for now, we're gonna pull this car back off the lift. We'll wait for that DME to come in, put that DME on, and then see where we go from here. But I think that's gonna conclude this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm gonna really enjoy having this beauty in the shop while we work on the next project. So stay tuned for that. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I sure did. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one.